Madam Rama is always busy writing something. The next presentation. Moderation. My dear friends, I thank Dr. Sridgar for his zeal and enthusiasm for holding these meetings. Really appreciate that. And yes, and hello. The academics have to go on and screen here. Right? Anyway, in 2012, back in 2012, when the shock trial was coming and was declared as a late-breaking trial in the European Society of Cardiology, they said intractable balloon pump should be downgraded to a not from class 1 to class 2. That was a major setback for the guidelines. So the guidelines were overturned that same year. And they said IVP is downgraded from class 1 to class 2. From the first time when IVP was introduced, 1968, the first trial of intractable balloon pump was done. We've come almost more than 5 decades now, and still IVP still rules the roost. In spite of the guidelines saying it does not support hemodynamics, does not support. I don't think any cardiothoracic surgeon would say that intractable balloon pump has not saved this patient, or any interventional cardiologist who has done a angiogram has found left vein, which is an unstable plaque, as a bridge to the cath lab, from the cath lab to the theatre. I don't think you have anything else other than intractable balloon pump. And my memory goes, my experience goes, hundreds of lives saved because of intractable balloon pump. So it's hundreds of lives saved with the intractable balloon pump, and it's here to stay. Lots of trials have been done. There are better gadgets, there are better treatments available, but yes, it is still there to say. Of late, there has been a shortage of intractable balloon pumps. The stethoscope, I think, have withdrawn the intractable balloon pumps from the market, saying that there is a default, and there is a real shortage of intractable balloon pumps. So, having said that, let us go to the first case what I have had here. This was a 34-year-old male. I'll present the story again. 34-year-old male who had an acute MI in the periphery. He was taken for a PCI 3-4 days later. Now was not thrombolized, and used the drugs for a few years and then stopped the drugs. 5 years later, he had again unstable angina. He underwent for an angiogram, and he had triple vessel disease this time. So he underwent triple vessel stents in Manipal, Karnataka, and he did well. This was in the month of November. In the month of January, again he had an angina. They took him back for an angiogram again in the month of February, and all the stents had an instant stenosis. He had dyslipidemia. He was a diabetic, but all the stents closed up. Barely abdomen was there. So he underwent a bypass surgery the same month, immediately after that. And this was done in Bangalore. The surgery was done in Bangalore, and he did well for 2 months. 2 months later, again he had angina after bypass surgery. So he had triple vessel stenting, then he had bypass surgery. In the span of 6 months, 2 total revascularizations were done, and he still had an angina. This time the family took him to a psychiatrist saying, this guy has gone bonkers, and so he consulted the psychiatrist for 3 months after bypass surgery. The surgeon also reassured him that nothing can go wrong at this stage now. Not so early, 2 months. Then incidentally he happened to land with us, and he did an angiogram. He came in a super emergency. Acute LVF, cardiogenic shock, sepsis, disoriented, hypoxic, very severe. He had cold extremities, he was in a state of shock. His saturations were 80%, blood pressure 90/70. He had an S3 gallop, coarse crepitations in the lung. He was drowsy, irritable, but communicating well. WBC count was 17,400, creatinine was normal. CRP was 24, and his blood culture was negative, urine culture was negative, urine showed almost like 30 to 50%. Echo showed an RWMA, moderate hypokinesia of inferior wall, IVS, apex anterior wall. In fact, entire the global hypokinesia of 25 to 30% was the EF what he had. The ECG showed dynamic changes. At time of admission, there were a lot of STD changes, inferior lateral leads, 2 to 3 millimeters depression in inferior lateral leads, and every day it was fluctuating. So ongoing dynamic ECG changes, echo with severe LV dysfunction, mild MR, mild AR, mild TR. So we had a patient with unstable angina, TROBI positive, post PCI, post CABG, occluded grafts, and dynamic ECG changes, sepsis, acute left ventricular failure, Phillips class 3, in a state of shock, in fact, and diabetes uncontrolled. So he was stabilized initially in the hospital with oxygen, heparin, aspirin, dobutamine, dopamine, noradrenaline, insulin. He was continuing to be intermittently disoriented, confused, hypoxic. He did not tolerate the BiPAP, was very restless and agitated. The repeat echo showed again worsening of the ejection fraction and a moderate mitral registration. The mitral registration had increased at the time. LV also became a little more dilated. Persisting LVF. We told the family that we need an invasive approach versus a conservative treatment. The strategy of intracranial support was initiated at the time with elective intubation and ventilation. BP continued to be low on IABP for 2 days. In spite of putting him on IABP, BP was low. We discussed with the surgeon whether they would like to go in again for surgery at the stage, but the surgeon refused and said he's in sepsis and he will not come out of this situation there. The creatinine was rising, so we gave the options to the family and they opted for a percutaneous approach to the procedure. We put an IABP and took him for a diagnostic shoot, and as expected, again, the native vessels were severely diseased. The left main was 1.5 millimeters circumflex, less than a millimeter. Dominant circumflex, LAD probably 1.25, 1.5 millimeter size. That was what we had, the initial picture was. And the grafts are again completely closed down. The RC again was totally occluded in the mid segment there. So with the IABP, the endoscopic pressure was 36 and his blood pressure was 70, 80. Augmented pressure was coming around 90. Even the LV was not supporting, the intracranial was not supporting. At this stage, we decided to put him on ECMO. We covered this 47-year-old male with progressive worsening of angina, dyspnea, generalized weakness with fever. He had multiple comorbidities in the form of diabetes mellitus, hypertension, old inferior MI, PCA, LCH, dominant circumflex in 2004, and 2013 again he had symptomatic. January 2014 he had a bypass surgery, 4 grafts. June 2014 all the grafts are loaded there, and he presented to us in a state of shock with acute coronary syndrome, with acute ventricular failure there. He was metabolic acidosis, sepsis, with a severe systolic dysfunction. But in ECG showing a lot of STT changes, there's a lot of dynamic changes there. Day to day there were changes happening there. No wonder, because the coronaries were completely occluded there. So that was a situation where we had to take a decision. This Phillips class 3, class 4 situation. The initial 2 days appeared to improve with oxygen supplementation, but again he was intermittently disoriented, confused, hypoxic, did not tolerate BiPAP, and his mitral registration worsened. There were more dynamic changes, persisting LV, pulmonary edema, and we thought we would put an IABP, intubate him, ventilate him, and then take him for a intervention there. The strategy was do an elective intubation, put an IABP. Now, the role of IABP in the presence of mild AR was one thing which we had to question ourselves. Fortunately, it was mild, it was not moderate. I would not know what my strategies would be. The IT registration was moderate or severe at this stage. And probably ECMO or Impella would be the better choice at that time. We thought we'll stabilize it for a few more days, send it for a redo surgery. The surgeon's opinion was taken, and they did plan a redo CABG MVR once the patient is stable and out of sepsis. Or attempt a high-risk PCI with an ECMO support or a percutaneous cardiopulmonary bypass. Impella was discussed, but we didn't have Impella at that time. So we all are familiar with the physiological effects and therapeutic rationale of how a intracranial works. So with the balloon inflating in diastole, there's an increased coronary perfusion pressure, increased coronary blood flow, and increased myocardial oxygen supply. And with the sudden deflation of the balloon in the systole, you have systolic unloading with a decrease in LV wall tension, afterload, decrease in end-stage pressure, increase in cardiac output, and decrease myocardial oxygen demand. So with this, we took an initial diagnostic shoot with the IVP already in place there. The IVP was not making much of an effort there, and my assessment and appearance, the worse the LV, the less the chances that IVP will really support the ventricle. This is my experience with the IVP. So his LV was really poor, LV was not supporting, and the IVP also was not giving a good hemodynamic support at this time. And as soon as we saw the first shoot, we said he's not going to be, and the IVP was not going to give us support. So we put in a ECMO, VA ECMO from the left femoral root with a 7 French EBU there. The VA ECMO was put in about 15 minutes time because we were already prepared for this. 2 wires into the LED and LCX. Okay, that's better. So these films are not playing. Let me see the next one. The pre-dilatation of the ostium, the circumflex and LFC was done with 2 into 12, 3 to 12. The check angio of the bova slightly improved flow in the LAD and the circumflex. We did a stenting of the left vein directly, 3.5 to 24 Zines prime, and that was stented at 18 atmosphere post-dilated. We did not use an IVS at this time, and he did well for a year. We did a check angiogram because of such aggressive atherosclerosis what he had. Sorry, the images were not playing well. So the take-home message from this case was that acute coronary syndrome was complicated by this cardiogenic shock. The mortality rates are quite high despite optimal pharmacological treatment and mechanical support. He was on 3 supports: noradrenaline, adrenaline, dobutamine, and dopamine. All 4 he was on for some time. The higher the requirement for the vasopressors, the worse the prognosis, and especially if you are using more than 2 vasopressors and inotropes, probably it's time to upgrade and think of a mechanical support. Some patients have malignant progression of atherosclerosis. This patient had. The family initially sought a psychiatrist's opinion for the continued angina after bypass surgery. So to do a PCI again in a situation with 3 stents which are already closed, diffuse ISR, a CABG grafts closed was a difficult decision because any PCI again would close down the stents again. So that was the fear we had at this time. The CT surgical team was of great support for putting us the ECMO during the case. And this high-risk PCI can often be managed with an IVP support most often. But in special situations where we think the IVP cannot be alone depended upon, probably you need an adequate circulatory support with an ECMO. Definitely ECMO gave us a much more stable blood pressure, and not in a single time he dropped his pressure so became unstable, though everything was under control there. It's very simple to place, definitely cheaper in terms of cost. You can switch over anytime. Once you have access, you can immediately switch over to a higher grade, including Impella, but we didn't have it at the time. Maybe particularly helpful in acute decomposition of chronic heart failure, especially SCAI shock stages of B and C. What is important is the duration of hemodynamic compromise, the severity of hemodynamic compromise, which will dictate what type of mechanical circulatory support one would need or one would give us real support there before revascularization. And the patient not being in a metabolic shock, just a hemodynamic shock is what we can really do and reverse the changes. But once the patient enters into metabolic shock, it's often a downhill course and patients don't do well there. So, timing of the implementation of mechanical circulatory support is very, very important. The earlier you intervene, the better it is. The door to support time is very, very critical. Once you're reaching more than 2 vasopressors or inotropes, probably it's time to think of a mechanical circulatory support. And in my experience, intrahepatic balloon pump is one of our best friends in the time of crisis. The earlier it is given, the better it is. Once the patient goes into a full shock, hemodynamic shock as well as metabolic shock, like this house of complete fire, it's difficult to extinguish the fire, and the damage is done by this time, difficult to retrieve. And so the role of IVP in this high-risk PCI and left ventricular function recovery, there were 2 trials which were done. The PROTECT 2 trial was done where they compared intrahepatic balloon pump with Impella. and it was a negative trial. The 30-day outcomes were the same between intra-aortic balloon pump and Impella. But after 30 days, between 90 days, there was a marginal improvement in the Impella group. But at the end of 90 days, again, when they did an analysis, they found that the ejection fraction and the NYHA class were similar between the two study groups. So even at 90 days, though they had a better hemodynamic outcomes with the Impella, the actual increase in ejection fraction and the NYHA class were similar at the end of 90 days. A short trial, but it was a negative trial. I'm not saying that Impella is not good, but depending on the stage of the shock, probably. There was a British study, BCAS-1 study, again a short study, small study, probably about 50 patients, 24 in each arm. Again, the 30-day mortality was no different, but they were followed up for 90 days and then for 5 years they were followed up, and the same population, again there was no significant difference between the Impella group and the IABP group as far as outcomes are concerned. Marginal trend towards improvement with better outcomes with Impella. Planned intra-aortic balloon pump insertion versus unplanned intra-aortic balloon pump insertion. Again, the planned elective intra-aortic balloon pump insertion before a crash definitely does improve the outcomes. This is what is shown in this BCAS-1 trial when the graphs are supported coverage there. So unplanned intra-aortic balloon pump, the outcomes are not so good. Very important thing to understand is not everyone responds the same with an intra-aortic balloon pump. There's a differential responses, and the 30cc balloon is different from a 40cc balloon, is different from a 50cc balloon. In my initial days of practice, we were scared the 50cc balloon or 40cc balloon would sit across the renal arteries and probably worsen the renal function. But a larger balloon definitely does a good response. One of the best predictors for response is cardiac index of less than 2.2. If the cardiac index is more than 2.2, probably an intra-aortic balloon pump would not give much hemodynamic support there. Regarding the 50cc intra-aortic balloon pump catheter, I don't know what is the experience of the house. Anybody using the intra-aortic balloon pump 50cc balloon? There is data today to say that the 50cc balloon using an 8 French catheter, there's a 20 to 30% increased displacement, 20 to 30% greater diastolic augmentation, and 20 to 30% greater afterload reduction. So there is a significant better response with intra-aortic balloon 50cc size. And if you look at this graph here at the bottom, this is reported in Cardiology Intervention 2017. 76 patients were studied with this balloon, and 60 patients did have a good response. 16 patients did not have a good response. In fact, they were poor responders or non-responders. If you look at the hemodynamic data in this group of 76 patients, what they had, the diastolic augmentation was definitely better, 42. The PA systolic pressure dropped by about 10. The PA diastolic pressure again dropped by about 6. The mean artery pressure, mean pulmonary pressure again dropped. The cardiac output definitely was much better. The cardiac index also was much better. So a 50cc balloon probably will give a better support than a 40cc or 30cc balloon. So that can be thought of as incremental increase in the size. This ISAR shock trial reported in New England Journal of Medicine and the IMPRESS trial again have very clearly seen whether there would be a difference in the outcomes of these patients, and they found that intra-aortic balloon pump does give a good support. Trend towards hemodynamic improvement with Impella is seen, but very marginal improvement. The IMPRESS trial, they followed up with patients, a small number of patients, I think again 50 patients or so, for a 5-year duration, and they found there was no change in the outcomes, IABP versus Impella, mechanical support. But what was important was, the earlier the support was given with IABP, the outcomes was definitely much better there. So, don't start your balloon pump, don't use your balloon pump after the patient is crashed, after you've done a CPR, after you've done a crash. It's preferable to put it electively in before a PCI, especially if you think you're doing a high-risk PCI. That's where the role of a balloon pump definitely scores. And if you want to upgrade, probably with the same wire, you can. This was one where again we used as Protect 2 was done, requiring a prophylactic hemodynamic support during non-emergent high-risk PCI on unprotected left main, last patent conduit, and an ejection fraction less than 35%, or a three-vessel disease and an EF of less than 30%. The randomized patients, about 600 patients, I think, in this study, and the primary endpoint was 30-day composite major adverse events, and a follow-up the composite again major adverse events at 90 days. Not much of a difference at 30 days major adverse events. Intracranial purpose red versus green in the develop. Statistically not significant. In 90 days, there was a trend towards improvement with the impella when compared to the IABP. But the vascular complications were quite high, and it outmaneuvered the advantages what was seen with the impella there, the hemodynamic support there. The IABP shock 2 trial said this, based on this trial, the IABP usage was downgraded to class 2 from class 1. But by and large, from the house, I would like to take an opinion. Is there a role of IABP in the cardiogenic shock today in your cath lab, especially when you come with an acute MI? I would say that's the first instrument I would use rather than you go for impella or ECMO or any other thing. Especially in states of sky shock, BAC, definitely it's got a significant role to play. And I'll just use one more. I don't know, 6 presentations, but any comments on this previous case? Sir, let's hope my this one will be. Can you just
actual myocardium reaching the percentage of blood is also we are not sure unless you long term data. So it's a definitely challenging case for anybody because there is no way you can go into something like that. And probably one thing is a heart transplantation heart maybe.
So we did a first angiogram, follow angiogram in 2015, and the left main to circumflex state was good, patent. He continued to, he works in a school, he runs a school in fact, he's a coordinator there, and he was leading an active lifestyle. 2017, he came back with an instant restenosis, angina on exertion, he was walking 6 to 7 kilometers, and he was doing extremely well. 2017, he came back with an instant restenosis. And we did a cutting valve inflation, high pressure inflation. We used we didn't use any rota at the time. He did well again for 3 years. 2019, he came back again with instant restenosis. And we said, one more surgery, but he was reluctant. He said, I would like to have an angioplasty done. So we put a stent the second time. Stent in stent this time. And he did again well for 1.5 years. 2021, he had a chest pain again, came back to the hospital, and again he had an instant restenosis. This time we sent him to Dr. R.K. Jain for a laser therapy because it was multiple restenosis, already 3 layers of stents were there. So R.K. Jain did a laser recanalization for the vessel there. He's doing well, it's almost 9 years now. Continues to do and lead an active lifestyle. He has constructed a temple, runs a school, and does a lot of social service. Today morning we spoke to him, and he said, I'm doing fine. I'm following up with RKJ at Kim's Hospital. And because of the laser and those things, and he's from Kabul. So he's doing well actually. This is the follow-up for almost 9 years now. Yes, sir. I hope this. This was an 84-year-old gentleman who had presented with an acute LVF cardiogenic shock again. He had a STEMI, his troponins were elevated, and he had a pacemaker implantation. About 4 months prior to this event, what happened? I don't remember whether we did an angiogram the first time or not. He had a rise in creatinine 2 or something like that. He was hypertensive, non-diabetic. So this was the case again with ECMO and diabetic support of PCI for a known patent vessel. There was only one vessel which was patent for him. 84-year-old, NSTEMI, acute kidney injury on CKD, the creatinine worsened on diuretics, acute LVF, severe renal dysfunction, less than 30% fraction. He was a hypertensive and non-diabetic. We thought we should stabilize him initially. For 2 days we did stabilization, diuretics, BiPAP, ventilator, oxygen and all that. And then we thought we planned for a angiogram, and that's the angiogram there. Okay. Can we have the lights on? It is displaying. So the RCA had completely occluded, and the left system also has the circumflex is occluded. The circumflex is occluded, filling the collaterals. Osteal occlusion of the circumflex. This left main had almost a 70% stenosis. The mid RCA was totally occluded. So the strategy was heading for a revascularization. That's the LED there. Heavily calcified left main, proximal LED. This was the only vessel which was supplying the right coronary artery and the circumflex. And this was the lone patent vessel for him at this particular time. So the options were discussed with the family: 84 years, severe renal dysfunction, triple vessel disease. Surgeon was involved in the discussion, but he said, I put one graft LAD in, he said acceptable, but family was not willing for it. So we decided to do a PCI to LAD and RC with probably a support. So the initial trial was to open the RCA. We tried for nearly half an hour or so, and with microcatheter, changing the XPRC, AL1, every attempt failed. The wire crossed up to mid RCA, but then balloons, 1 millimeter balloon was not crossing there. So at this time we said, let's leave the RCA because it's totally dependent on the left system there, and we'll survive on the collaterals at 84 years. And that was the LED shoot, heavily calcified LED. The media LED was heavily calcified. So we felt we should, with this EF of less than 30%, we thought we should again put an ECMO for a support loan vessel there. So that's the ECMO, VA ECMO done, the catheter, the venous cannula in the right atrium. The run-through wire was used initially with the microcatheter, exchanged with the rota wire, and then we did rotablation of the left main to LED. Post that, we did a pre-dilatation of the entire bed with a 3 or 3.5 millimeter balloon. One long stent placed from proximal to medial LED, and second stent placed in the left main to LED, 4 millimeter, 4 into 22 onyx in proximal segment, and 3.5 into 38 in the middle LED. And that's the final result there. As we were completing the case, we went into severe hypertension, even ECMO. And we did an echo at this time. We thought we had some perforation or something like that. But his LV dilated and his EF dropped to 20%. Severely dilated LV, hardly contracting. We thought we were losing on the table at this time. So we said, that's the final result there. So at that time, we started weaning off the ECMO because it was probably leading to more, it was unloading the ventricle much more, and we put an IVP and we weaned off the ECMO. And he remained on IVP for 3 days, gradually improved his LV. His LV improved to 40% on intratic balloon pump 3 days later, and he went home. This is almost 2.5 years now, and he's doing well. The last follow-up was in January. So mechanical circulatory support does make complex high-risk PCI safer. You're sweating less in the catheter. The Pre-procedure planning is very important and vital for a successful PCI. For example, in this case, we did plan for ECMO, and we thought in case he worsens, LV starts ballooning out, we would put an intracranial balloon pump on. We went to the area of the fixing surgeon was ready. Choosing the right MCS at the right time is very important because this patient was improved and stabilized on medical management. The timing of the support again is equally important. It's not just choosing the right MCS, but also the timing of the MCS is equally important. IVP is definite role to play into this management of patients with high-risk PCI. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just show before we start the APK pre-procedure?
Pre-procedure. Actually, I have all the figures, sir, but
Before without
we loaded a few
before this. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I mean, it's not question was right. It's right. Now, actually, you in both the cases, it's not just IVP alone. You use ECMO. It's not IVP alone. The question is IVP alone. So, once you have got ECMO and IVP combination, you have got one of the best possible mechanical supports. You have decreased the afterload, preload, and optimized everything. So I'm not sure whether, though I mean I'm not saying that what we did is right or wrong. Of course, obviously you were successful and it was required, and you are forced to use IVP in second case. Definitely there is a role. Use of IVP after putting ECMO to vent the ventricles and decrease the afterload is well accepted. Now the question is of IVP alone in PCI. Now, if you look at the shock and other things, we get negative results or neutral results, so called, because the kind of patients you are dealing with is a heterogeneous. All kinds of patients are there. There are patients with mitral regurgitation, ventricular septal defect, severe dysfunction, hibernating myocardium, fibrosed LV, dilated LV. Each subset is different. If you really ask me, we should not go totally by these trials. All the trials, including ECMO supported PCIs, impeller supported PCIs available till today, they did not show favorable response because you cross over. Why did you cross over? Your randomized trial, that protect 2. The patients must have crossed over. And the second thing, when you really enroll a patient in a clinical trial, you really go into the trial, half of the patients you don't enroll. If I am an investigator in a particular center, if I have got a study to randomize patients to impeller versus IVP, then I say, a patient right. This patient will not, he has to have impeller. This patient is an easy patient, let us try IV. So you may take it. So all these factors are not captured even when you randomize, because there is a selection bias by the investigator, and it is not easy to control. Now,
finally, emergency setting is very challenging to recruit the patients to the study. But
the protect 2 is not emergency, non-emergency. Even emergency, if I have got all the facilities, what is the big deal? The patient becomes even more biased. A patient is unstable. I said IVP is going to be the self-supporting impeller and don't randomize the patient. Who are the patients who are going to be randomized? Simpler patients, where probably you think nobody wants to do the patient. However, scientific research you want to do. You have a patient who you think is not going to do well with IVP, you will not randomize the patient.
So there was a trial called CRISP-AMI trial, which randomized about 200 patients or so with intracranial pump with an impeller, randomized acute angioval MI, cardiogenic shock. Only that's it, nothing else. No complications, no valvular damage, nothing there. And they found the 30-day mortality and the 90-day mortality was similar between IVP and impeller. So there was no change. Trend towards improvement. Again, the word is trended towards improvement with impeller rather than with the intracranial.
The reason I am saying is, you cannot define patient subsets by all characters. There is an inherent bias even before you randomize the patient.
So heterogeneous group of patients.
Not a patient who has to benefit from impeller, you will not randomize the patient. That's one. Now coming back to IVP, if systolic blood pressure, warm extremities, even if these are non-recurring, IVP is non-recurring. If you have got a 70 systolic blood pressure, cold extremities, even if you put IVP, it won't. There are some sets with ischemia is a strong component. If mitral registration is a strong component, patient will die. If you have got all dead myocardium, you want to do, you may not get it. Having said that, still IVP, the Westerners use, for example, I think last year, there is a paper from one of the transplant centers. They used intra-IVP IVP and kept it for 6 months. 6 months. Beam, one of the Beam Singh, what is that? Beam Reddy. He is one of the authors from Hyderabad. That boy is from Hyderabad. So there is, the selection of patients is so important. And definitely there are subset of patients who benefit. And there are some subset of patients where it is useless.
True, sir. So that's what I also mentioned in the slides. One, the timing of the circulatory support is very important. In early initiation, when you anticipate that the patient is going to crash, is better. In fact, I've got another 6 cases here in my, but they're not loading in here, I'm just trying there. The point is, in the last 2 or 3 months, we had some interventions where the patient crashed, post-stenting, slow flow, no flow, and then an IVP was put in, but all the 3 patients could not be salvaged. The same patients, definitely, think a second time retrospectively, would have benefited putting an IVP before we started the PCI. So putting an IVP before a PCI, which is high-risk PCI, or patients hemodynamics are really compromised, would be a better choice than putting an IVP after the crash, after CPR, after a hemodynamic complete collapse. So the timing is very important. Early initiation is very important. Not everybody responds to an IVP. There are people who increase their cardiac output from 0.8 liters to 1 liter, some to 1.5 liters. The 50 cc balloon has increased the cardiac output by 1.5 liters. But there are a significant chunk of patients, 25 to 30% of the patients, where they're not responders, and a small group of patients, 10 to 50% of patients, deteriorate on IVP. Especially if you do not give the proper timing of the balloon deflation, if you don't concentrate on that particular thing, and you get some patients, deteriorate also.
Cardiac output increase is about 1.5. Cardiac output is 1 liter, they are not doing it. If it is more than 2.2 cardiac index, they don't do it. We have got other cases. Either you want to make
actually classified shock. Patient belongs to A, B, C, D, E. Suppose straight away you are saying that class E, there is no role of impella or A. If E, because there is severe hypoperfusion and hypoxemia, only ECMO is the best device. But B, C, D also usually not recommended. C and D. C, D, impella you can go. Early stage C, you decide the prognosis, not the device. First, early escalation of the therapy. Suppose the patient is going from C to D, so you are increasing the more and more inotropes. The studies have shown instead of 2 inotropes, in the patients who are requiring the 4 inotropes, the mortality is very high. So that's the reason if the patient, you are increasing the inotropes, requiring more and more inotropes, that is the time where you have to go for early FCS and cut down the inotropes. More inotropes you are giving, mortality is going to increase. So that's the reason when C is there, instead of increasing the inotropes, go for early escalation. And another important point, pulmonary artery pressures. You have to assess the gap. See the pulmonary wedge pressure, see the PA pressure, LVDP. So you define, is it LV dominant shock or RV dominant shock or biventricular shock. With the LV dominant shock, you can use ECMO, you can use the impella, or you can dispel. But if the patient is having a biventricular shock, then when already patient presented with LV dominant shock, but as the time passes, then RV failure will take place. That time, impella alone will not happen. You have to add ECMO, or you have to go with the right-sided impella. Only that is the only one device, not fully commerciable. But when you ask, they will provide. But that is a disadvantage. You have to have a 22 French sheet, whereas impella, the 2.5 13 French, and the impella, if you take the 3.5 is about foot range. So always define the shock. Suppose the patient presents with a predominant RV shock. If you put a left-sided, they deteriorate arms. So that's the reason define how the PA pressure is more or not. You always calculate the cardiac power output and also calculate the pulmonary artery flow index. So based upon that, whether you want to put the right-sided support or left-sided support or biventricular support, and monitoring is very important. And once you put these devices, afterwards, easy improving or not. Suppose lactates are very high, like we define the cardiac shock based upon the if less than 4, definitely they carry very good prognosis. If you exceed more than 12, they carry extremely bad. That is in ultimately the E stage. So that time you have to go with not only like ECMO plus impeller, because the impeller alone will not support. Or you can impeller and you can also combination of therapies. That is also very important. So first, PA pressure is mapping pulmonary wedge pressures and RA pressure. Suppose the only pulmonary wedge pressure is elevated, no right-sided pressure elevation, PA pressure is not elevated, impeller, ECMO, all these things. But early stages, as Dr. Shastri mentioned, in early stages, MI-related shocks, the IABP will not work based upon the studies. But chronic LV dysfunction, protected PCA, some patients definitely it is going to be beneficial. But definitely, though impeller is very, the protective trial is the only one showed increased, improved outcome that allowed the complete revascularization and CN incidence was less. So it allows us to complete the procedure. That is the advantage of protect system. That's the reason, even in protect sub-study, what they did, whether they have given the impeller prior to PCA, during PCA, post PCA. So they compare. If you start the impeller prior to PCA, outcome is much better compared to the patients who received after PCA. So compared to post PCA support, those who received during PCA, they fared well. That means early escalation is very important. So another thing is the staging of shock, pulmonary artery pressure, vent pressures assessment, classify is it left dominant, right dominant, or biventricular, whether he requires biventricular support or predominant right ventricular. So based on outcome. But still, the majority of the studies did not show any improved base rate in many studies. But recently, a few studies have shown there is favorable data with the impeller, even ECMO also, in selected patients. That's the reason, ultimately, the Detroit study where they have vast experience on the acute myocardial shock, finally they concluded, if you are giving a pre-procedure support and PA pressure assessment, definitely outcome will be much better. So pulmonary artery pressure plays a crucial role in determining the prognosis and the therapy.
Sure. So this one slide I have on the function, what Sridhar just mentioned. If somebody has an inferior MI and RVMI and is in cardiac shock, your IVP is not being treated rather than increasing the current perfusion pressure. The PAPI is very important. PAPI more than 2 is important. Systemic vascular resistance is important. The mean pulmonary pressure is important. The heart rate is important. These are the people who respond very well to an IVP. This is the slide which clearly shows that a small percentage of patients there is a decrease in the cardiac output in spite of an IVP. Small percentage of patients there is an increase in cardiac output. Yeah, so there are some responders and some non-responders. And so this is what I was telling. B and C stages of heart failure, of shock, yes, it is useful. But D and E, out again there. And the protective trial was really a negative trial actually. I was going through the data actually, and so it's a negative trial. 30 days, 90 days has been a negative trial. In the IMPRESS trial, 5-year outcomes have been taken, and there's been not much of an improvement in the outcomes as far as the improvement in the ejection fraction or the NYHA class is concerned at the end of 5 years.
So imagine real world how many kinds of humanity is there.
Yeah, next one.
Think we want to
Yes.
Upper
Especially on this project trial, if you remove the CPME elevations, it is almost significant. It means they had, I think, 3 times was also MI. So if you remove that, it was almost significant. Actually, there's a nice thing, we have a great story being Project 4, and it talks nicely about Project 2. And it is actually a very positive track, but the way they did it was they included all these low CPM elevations also as MI. The other thing is, if you look at whether the IPP trials or these trials, later on these patients seem to do better, which means although maybe you are not able to actually prevent deaths at that time, you do a better revascularization. So that our long term they seem to do better.
Okay. So acute hemodynamics much better with Impella.
Definitely, and that
Yes, that also is acute hemodynamics on the table much better in support. The vascular complications negate the benefit what we've seen with the hemodynamics of what we've seen. That's why this is balanced out. The mortality, HT factor improvement, HYC class at the end of 90 days, 1 year, 5 years, is not much change.
The second case was very beautiful. Once you saw that the LD was getting overloaded, to use a device to unload it, I think that was a very good move. Because I think many people would just sit with the ECMO and then just give up.
So we rapidly read out ECMO at this particular time and we thought the LD is free because we suddenly went to hypertension. It was not a operation there because we did a rota. Device was done, right? Thank you.
ECMO, upfront ECMO, regarding one patient presented with a chronic stable syndromes with a severe dysfunction. So the history is a 65 years old male having hypertension, diabetes, had a old anterior MI with severe dysfunction. The present problem is class 3 exertion angina, and his angiogram showing two vessel disease, that is the LAD CTO with a non-viable myocardial document and cardiac MRI, and circumflex is dominant with the tight simple type A lesions in OM1, OM and left PDA, and the plan is to say with upfront ECMO to OMs and PDA. At that time, we counseled for the Impella, but because of the cost constraints, is unable to afford, so we did the under the cover of the ECMO. And this is the cardiac MRI showing the scar tissue of the interventricular septum with a severe dysfunction. And almost the non-viable myocardium is, they describe around 35 to 40% non-viable myocardium in the LAD territory. And coming to the fundamentals of this thing, once you know the pressure volume relations, so this is the stroke work. And coming to different mechanical circulatory support and situations, if you carefully see, this is the y-axis is the pressure and the x-axis is the volumes, and this is the routine stroke work, normal thing. And in case of cardiogenic shock, in non-coming, sir. Yes. Okay, now you. You can see in case of cardiogenic shock, both the pressure volumes are at the lower side, and once you start the ECMO, almost the afterload will be more and pressure will be there, and the volume curve will become narrow. You can see that means at the expense of the afterload, the cardiac output is maintained in the ECMO. So that's why these patients are more prone for acute pulmonary edema. Suppose long-standing ECMO, and if you take the Impella, it is a preload dependent, and if you carefully see, the pressure curve is shifted towards the left and down in case of Impella. And the most ideally is Impella, that is ECMO and Impella, where the optimal cardiac output is maintained at a reasonable afterload as well as a preload. And with this, we did the case, and with the help of the surgeon, it is a cut down how bad it is, we can see. And the cannula is also very, very big. In the presence of peripheral vascular disease, local vascular problems can occur. And 13 French is a right femoral arterial cannula, and 21 French is a right femoral venous cannula. And this is the thing, you can see the ECMO. This is the arterial line, and this is the venous line, almost 17 French and 21 French. And of course, the centrifugal pump, and then oxygenator, and this is the overall unit. So after ECMO insertion, upfront ECMO, then patient was shifted to the cath lab, and so this is the anatomy. LAD is a total occlusion with an non-viable myocardium and LAD directly, and you can see the OM1, OM2 as well as the left PDA, which are simple lesions actually. So it was pre-dilated and then stented with the 2.5 to 20, and then OM3 also it was done. And OM1 wide which was pre-dilated as well as stented, and then hyperreal dilatation was done. And of course this is a simple lesions, technically not so much demanding. And ultimately all the three diabetes OM1, OM2 as well as the FPD, they are all confused. And of course this clinical course is very peculiar. This patient was stable and ECMO was weaned off on the second day. And then on the fourth day, patient developed sudden acute LVF, and which was managed by means of aggressive diuretic therapy, and then followed by a guideline-directed medical treatment. And then patient was discharged at stable state on day 6. And then it is asymptomatic till 6 months. And the 7th month, he had a acute decompensated heart failure requiring hospital admissions. And again, he was stabilized and stable till 12 months, and he had a sudden cardiac death. And on the follow-up week also, the patient has had a severe dysfunction, no improvement of the LV function. So this is the natural history of this first case, which was done by ECMO. Then coming to the second case, which was done by means of a patient was anti-wall MI, and IABP support was done because at that time the pressures are low, the patient is in a cardiogenic shock, and this patient is a 71-year-old gentleman having hypertension diabetes, and window period of 6 hours with ongoing angina, and patient has severe dysfunction. Classical signs of shock are there in terms of the cold, clammy skin, tachycardia, everything is there, and almost SCAI stage C, and primary angioplasty with IABP support was done. So this is the anatomy. There you can see the true osteal lesion of the LAD and a classical slow flow because of the tightness of the lesion and the thrombus, and the circumference is also visible, which is non-dominant. And immediately we wired that one, and then followed by pre-dilatation with the balloon, and then this is the result we got. And of course OM osteal lesion we left because of the acute stage, and circumference you can see it is also flowing, which is because of the proximal type lesion. And ultimately we stented left main to LAD because it is a distal left main and the true osteal LAD lesion. And then we did a overlap stenting, 2 stents because of the very long stent and dispatch of the vessel size also, and then post dilated, and we got the same type. You can see the flow pattern is almost TB1 flows, TB1 or 1 to 2 flows like that. As there is a myocardial capillary high resistance, there is a very slow flow. You can see. You can see the flow patterns in the leg. And then we counsel the patient. So this is the final result. You can see how the flow has resistance as if it is a slow flow like phenomenon. You can see. And then post PCI, patient is continuing to have a shock in lower output cold cramping pulse rate 120. We counseled. So actually it was done on Friday. So we told patient we wait for about 2 days. Suppose no response, we want to do the impella also. So augmented BP, this is the blood pressure responses with augmented of 130 diastolic augmentation. Signs of shock continuing, plan for impella on 3rd day. Very peculiar on the 3rd day when we go the rounds, the signs of shock disappear. And totally the skin becomes normal and the patient has improved to stage B. The pulse rate returned, and then his pressures improved, the IABP requirement came down. So IABP continued till 5th day, and then he went down. and patient was improved and discharged after day 7. And very peculiar thing, when you have a chronological temporal profile, the patient had recurrent admissions for a period of almost 8 months, 5 admissions, recurrent episodes of acute decombinant failure. If you carefully, the LV ejection fraction always in the moderate range, around 38, as if a mid-range ejection fraction like thing. And we put all guideline directed medical treatment, including these Vimada, ARNI molecules, as well as dapagliflozin. And only things, respect introduction, just we started this one. Along with ARNI, dapagliflozin, carbidiol, as well as spironolactone. Patient was stabilized, and now he is in class 2 symptoms, and now he is doing very well, almost 1 year complete. So this is the second case with the IABP, then with a cardiac shock, improved, recurrent failures, and then presently in a stable state, stable compensated failure state with a moderate LV dysfunction. Another interesting case, third case, just I completed with the mechanical support. This is also cardiac shock with a mechanical complication. So this was previously described by Dr. Sridgar very beautifully. And lactic acid. Here what happens is in the patient with a primary angioplasty, that patient has a lactic acid of almost 7. And after ABP, second day, first day and second day of follow-up, it fell down to almost 3. And once the signs was improved, the patient has a normal lactic acid. And this is a very important to differentiate with the cardiac and cardiometabolic shock, so that you can use these metabolic mechanical circulatory support services in a legible way, so that you can also confident and you can counsel the patients also the outcomes very nicely. Of course, we already explained. I need not describe. And this patient is a 60 years old female, no risk factors, presented with inferior volume and day 3. But her vitals are showing hypotension with a tachycardic classical shock state with a tachypnea, and she had a classical systolic murmur with bilateral lower June crepitations having a pulmonary edema, and ECG showing a few waves already in inferior valve with ST elevations, and echo is showing a hypokinesia with Gulenki function and tachycardia, and posterior basal muscular septal rupture almost 8 millimeters, and lactic acid is 2.6. Which is a good sign. So this is the baseline. Left coronary is almost normal. And right side, right front is mid segment is osteothrombotic occlusion. And this is the echo. You can appreciate actually the more basal posterior muscular septal band, and then we confirm this is the one we want to do first initially. On the day 1 we put the IABP. And IABP, the pressures are just in the margin with the diastole documentation of around 110 to 120, and we counsel, and then for a VSD closure followed by revascularization. And this is the LV angiogram you can see, and classical, you can appreciate the, this is the one where you can see the septal rent, which is a postobasal, is a difficult anatomy, and then through the aortic, the arterial loop was done into the pulmonary artery, and then with the help of the snare, the dermo-wire in the pulmonary artery made catch the wire and made the loop, and then over the loop venous side, 10 sheet was advanced into the LV. You can appreciate how there are 2 bends are there from RV to RA to RV and RV to LV, because the orientation of the ventricular septal rupture from left to right is it is almost craniocardial like it is there. So it is a 2 bends are there between RA to RV and RV to LV. And here sometimes it's difficult to negotiate and support, because arterial loop this was given a good support, and then almost the 10 to 20 millimeter ambulatory device which it was opened in the LV side, the disc was opened, and then it was aligned with the VHD. And when we are just opening the right disc, the patient has cardiac arrest. And immediately the CPR was done with the TPA lead. Immediate TPA was just because of this access. We put the venous lead, and then patient revived immediately with pressures. And then after once it becomes patient was stabilized, the RV disc, you can see it was deployed, and then it was confirmed by means of TEE. You can appreciate this one. This is the left side disc, this is the right side disc about to open. And then this is after opening. The right disc, it is a classical diamond shaped and aligned properly the ventricular septum. And then once we release it with the device deployment or TPA support, patient is on ABP. And after that one, we just open the RC also. 3.5 to 24 very large vessel, and then posted deployment was done with the final results. And this patient almost in the first almost 1 week of ICC stay is there, very turbulent course is there. On the day one, once the pressures were improved, and then patient was on IVP for 3 days. On second day, she developed atrial arrhythmias and acute RV congestion. The patient has almost, the JVP was enlarged, just like a constitutive like veins were there. And then we decongested adequately, almost 120 milligrams of furosemide and 2.5 mg was given for 3 days. Then patient congestion was subsided, and she had 2-3 episodes of atrial fibrillations, which was averted by means of cardioid infusion. And then slowly the patient was improved, and then almost on day 5, day 7, the patient is relatively stable with almost 120 milligrams of furosemide. Patient is stable, and the inotropics are also been done, and almost the patient was discharged in a stable state with a guided directed medical drugs. All the 4 drugs were put along with the diuretics. Almost this is some 5 months it happened. Patient is relatively stable state coming with a regular follow-up. And here the ABP, simply before starting of the setting of the cardiometabolic shock, the patient was intervened. So the patient was improved, and it was a simple IABP. The patient was improved, and the mechanical completion was tackled. And when we discussed the surgeon regarding the closure, the most difficult VSD is the post-basal VSD. When they want to close the VSD for lifting the one, because the post-basal, the patient develops cardiac arrest and almost highest mortality with this type of ventricular septal we discussed. That's why we have taken the decision. And also completeness also, sometimes the orientation and the closure in this type of locations is most difficult actually. Inferior valve, post-basal muscular septal ventricular septal rupture. Now we have to see the follow-up. I shared my experience with Dr. Shastra also. He also told the patients are with a follow-up of almost 1 year. And after 1 year with unrelated death, the patient has a death not related to cardiac. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful, nice cases. Just only a couple of points I thought that. One is in a large case, probably a intraventricular access will avoid the 2 loops. If you directly go down like this, and coming to only one point, all of you are so experienced interventional cardiologists, you wonderful difficult cases. Don't forget about 2 things: ICDs and heart transplant. So after all the work, after all the money that you spend, patients may have sudden death, respiratory heart failure. Heart transplant is possible. 1 year mortality in most of the centers is 10-15%. And people survive better quality of life. and ICDs also, primary prevention. They should not be forgotten, especially if it is a common garden patient who doesn't want to spend money different. But if you spend ECMO, Impella and all, ICD is nothing. And whether or not patient undergoes, you document that the patient requests correct.
The ICD is quite cost effective. If you look at angioplasty versus ICD, except in the ACS situation, ICD is more cost effective. And the other thing is, many people think that if a guy has a LV dysfunction for 5 to 10 years and he's not had any arrhythmic episode, they think he's safe. But actually, he's as unsafe as a guy who is present with LV dysfunction for the first time. So we do PCA and then send him again because he was all this time and the patient also doesn't accept. He says, since 10 years I am having LV dysfunction. Why are you asking ICD now? So it's very important. The other thing is this post-dilatation in acute MI. There was a doctor in Bangalore who works in the armed forces, so he used to say that he never post-dilates. He puts a stent and then after 4 or 5 days he post-dilates. So over the last 6 months we have also been doing that. Almost half of our cases, if the clot burden is going to have low flow, we are not post-dilating. At discharge on the 4th day or something, we are post-dilating. And at that time, there is absolutely no problem with that low flow phenomenon.
If you want to do that, even safer thing will be with the 2B3 blockers and the modern anti-platelet anticoagulant regimen, especially if the patient comes beyond 6 hours. Just do a POVA. Unless there is a dissection, if you have got a TB3 flow, just come out. Give 2B3 blockers and go back after 2 days. Lesions will be much simpler and better results.
Actually, I want to mention two important observations. One is a patient with atrial severe dysfunction, a discrete lesion. Once opening means, unless you do a protocol-based cardiac MRS, card burden, and AICD, they have almost ended sudden cardiac arrest on the first month, or second month, or third month. There's a place the patient attendant won't accept. So once you counsel that angioplasty is the answer, we have to counsel regarding the severe LV dysfunctions, card burden more than 30% or 35%. He's a candidate for AICD hospital. That is the one. And second, recently CHIP CTO program, one of the operators from, I think some Kashmir or northeastern states, he presented very beautifully Dr.Sridgar's observation and your observation. What they will do is, in acute of my thrombus burden, just they will do the OVA, whatever the thing, and the patient is asked to come after 1 week or before hospital stay, or before discharge, or after 3 weeks. He did a systematically OCT based studies. And once the patient has a good vascular remodeling and beautiful thing, he is leaving, especially the block erosions. Block erosions, just they will heal after 3 weeks, and all these are 1 month. A good edema will be healed up. Suppose if the block rupture, all these things, here putting stress. Actually, OCT guided, he did systematically a study. At the time of the presentation, just doing a intracoronary thrombolysis and then doing the OCT. And then after thrombus is dissolved after 3 weeks, again the patient is asked to come and see whether block erosion is healed. He is not putting stents. Suppose if the block rupture is there, he is putting stents.
Usually, if you have intravascular image, as you mentioned, just I will slightly highlight. So always with a large lipid core. If you post dilate, 100% is going to develop slow flow, no flow. Without glycoprotein to be 3 tone. If you want under dilate. But if the block erosion, you get, because the lipid core is less. And if it is a calcific nodule leasing STEMI, you can dilate. So classify again STEMI based upon imaging. 50% of the patients are due to block rupture, due to large lipid core. About 50 to 20% of the patients due to erosion, plaque erosion. Plaque erosion usually subtotal occlusion, they carry good prognosis, and many times you can manage better. But 7 to 10% of the patients are due to calcific nodule. When the calcific nodule is there, you can dilate. But otherwise, if the large lipid core, diffuse young patient, long lesion is there, many times you always anticipate the slow flow, low flow, mentally prepare like a microcatheter, go distally, inject adrenaline or glycoprotein to be. All these things you have to be prepared. So always when I take the OCT image, not like before block rupture, before doing only I will tell this patient is going to UC and dilating block. Definitely is going to that is common because once you dilate, the necrotic core will go distally and it will be capillary bed. That leads to slow flow. So remaining unclassified, it may be class 2A, type B, or it may be imbalance between demand and supply, or SCAD may be there, or there are so many, the emboli may be there. So based upon the imaging, whether you want to dilate or you can decide.
Apart from the block morphology, the time duration matters. The blood characters and how it behaves varies from what you do within 1 to 6 hours to get 6 to 12 hours or after 12 to 24 hours.
But once a large lipid core is there,
Apart from lipid core, even thrombus burden changes.
yeah, thrombus pattern may change, but if the lipid core is large, necrotic, definitely once you dilate it, will go distally. It will approve.
Acroleamide, very short lady, IABP inserted ventilator, everything was done. Device was successfully weaned off from ventilator, no murmur, all parameters are good. We just removed IABP, that was 35 cc, and patient had either heart rupture and shock, faster. Second case is doing well, follow-up of 1 year. But most of the ventricular septal ruptures, whatever we do, it's actually the nature decides. With this late presentation, we are more successful. With this early intervention, you are not going to have good success because of the very rupture area is friable. You have to take a bigger, you is almost double the diameter of the, then only you do work. And otherwise it will friable and it will leak will be there.
But it has a good ring. That is the reason it's holding nicely. It's a more toward the patient rather than they are like a multiple tracks. Those are difficult to close and even surgically recurrence rate they carry very high. Whereas the mid and apical they carry very good prognosis and they are unable to.
Residual strengths are very
Yeah, these are unable. Yeah. And as he said, interjugular is the
more.
the alignment is better, manipulations are better. More we put pressure, what happens, giving away more comes.
Yes.
So septum can give away.
It's a cheesy like kind.
Cheesy like that.
I would like to present my few cases of protected PCA using the umbrella. So till now we discussed so many factors how to decide about the case selection. So in this for impellar case selection, probably all these three factors like patient comorbidities, complex coronary artery anatomy, and hemodynamic compromise. So overlapping of all these three will determine which patients needs a protected PCA. So coming to the patient comorbidities like heart failure, diabetes, advanced age, peripheral vascular disease, complex lesion complexity, unstable angina, recent ACS, and prior surgery. So these factors will put the patient at high risk for the reintervention or resurgery. So these people likely to benefit from the protected PCA. Coming to the coronary anatomy, if it is a multivessel disease, a left main disease, so these subsets of patients will benefit from the protected PCA. Coming to the hemodynamic compromise, if patient is having ejection fraction less than 35%, again these patients will benefit from the protected PCA. So again, dividing these into these anatomic factors, patient comorbidities, and hemodynamics. Anatomy again, if it is a last remaining coronary conduit, so then definitely it needs a protected PCA. So because of the single remaining conduit, then if any atherectomy is required, if atherectomy is required, atherectomy device is required, then protected PCA is indicated.
high anticipated ischemic burden or extensive revascularization, and if it is a CTO in retrograde approach, because these will take a lot of time and a lot of occlusions and a lot of ischemic time. And coming to the patient comorbidities like other comorbidities like COPD, anemia, renal impairment patient, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, this. And coming to the hemodynamics again, moderate to severe valvular disease, reduce the LV ejection fraction or increase LV EDP, and cardiac index is less than 2, and uncontrolled blood pressure, recent STEMI, all these are the factors. So this is the important algorithm. If you understand this, then probably it's easy for us to identify the patients who needs protective PCA. If ejection fraction is less than 40%, so as we discussed earlier, right heart catheterization is the key. So first we have to do the systemic right heart catheterization. Then based on the blood pressure, based on the saturation, boundary artery saturation, we'll decide which patients, whether they are having left dominant failure or biventricular failure or right dominant failure. Based on that. So again, coming to the factors, if it is a cardiac index less than 2 liters per minute per meter square, or PA saturation less than 55%, carries the very high risk, and it carries 2 points. Then syntax score more than 22, 1 point. Ejection fraction less than 25%, blood pressure less than 100 at the baseline, recent ACS, and planned revascularization of more than 2 territories, likely prolonged ischemia in the setting of retrograde CTO PCI or atherectomy device if you are taking, and severe MR if it is present, again carries 1 point, and decompensated state in the form of either elevated EDP more than 20, significant new orthopnea, high risk vascular injury, significant bleeding, and hemoglobin less than 8. So all these factors we have to check, and we have to give the scoring system. If the score is less than 2, probably without support we can proceed. If score is 3, probably we can consider based on the setup, based on the thing. But if it is score is more than or equal to 4, then probably he is a candidate for this. And one more interesting algorithm proposed by Mount Sinai group, Samir Sharma sir, based on only 2 factors: ejection fraction and complexity of the lesion. So complex PCI means either long calcified lesion, bifurcation lesion, unprotected left main lesion, or SVG lesions. These are present, and based on the ejection, if it is ejection fraction more than 35%, if it is a simple PCI, not meeting the criteria of complex PCI, then we can do without support. But if it is a complex PCI with hemodynamic components, probably impella is indicated. And ejection fraction, if it is between 20 to 35%, simple PCI also sometimes we can consider impella. But if it is a complex PCI or high syntax score more than 32 or high STA score of more than 5 or extensive revascularization is planned, then probably impella, we need impella support. If it is ejection fraction less than 20%, whether it's simple or complex, probably we need to straight away with the impeller. This is the simple explanation how impeller helps during the hemodynamic compromise. So if you look at this mean arterial pressure of 86, without impeller support, if you inflate the balloon here, after 15 seconds, the mean arterial pressure will drop by 15%. After 30 seconds, it will drop by 23%. And after 45 seconds, it will drop by 51%. And mean arterial pressure will go to 42. So here, probably patients may go into downward spiral, and you may not revive that patient. If you are doing a prolonged atherectomy or prolonged balloon inflations, whatever may be the reason. But whereas with impeller, initially after impeller initiation, impeller 2.5, the mean arterial pressure increases from 86 to 110. In the first place, mean arterial pressure increases. Whenever you inflate the balloon, the reduction in the pulse pressure will be very less. Like at 15 minutes, only 8% reduction. At 30 seconds, only 10% reduction. At 45%, only 12% reduction. And this
this hemodynamic thing will be nicely understood by the model developed by them. It's a Harvey heart model. So in that, they systemically show with IABP how it's going down, and with impella how it's going down and all. We can access that on the internet. So this will go into a new steady state of, this will not further go down. So that ischemic myocardium, like it will maintain at the hibernating state, and whatever may be the balloon inflations, it will be maintained at the hibernating state. Immediately after the release, then it will come back to the normal. So patients will not crash on table. That is the advantage with the implant. So coming to my cases, I present two cases. First one is a 61-year-old male. He is a diabetic. He developed antival MI when he was in service, the police officer. So he underwent primary CTCA to LAD in 2017. Now again he presented with unstable angina for the last 1 month, crescendo angina. And this he showed old antival MI. Echo we did, showed dilated LV with severe elbow dysfunction, like 30 to 35% here. And immediately after angio, patient developed LVF on table. So we surveyed him, and then based on this severe elbow dysfunction and the acute LVF, we did the viability study. So PET showed viability in all the territories. So then we went ahead with RTM discussion, and surgeons finally denied based on the various risk factors, and basically it's because of the poor targets. If you look at this is a diffusely diseased LAD, very thin vessel, and this left man is having very severe disease. Yeah, this lot of calcium is there in the distal left main and arterial LCH, and dominant RCA is very small, tiny vessel, and LED has got ISR here, and distal LED, if you see, it's a very thin vessel. So that's why surgeons deny it, because of the long-term patient patency of the grafts would be questioned. So we counsel the patient, and we place the impeller, and here we are monitoring the pulmonary pressures with the catheter. So after impeller, we wide both LED and SAP. And here we are trying to take the OCT catheter. It was not going. So one OCT catheter damaged without doing the imaging. Then we decided to do the balloon here, and we have done the redilatation. Then we redilate the LED, and after that we have done the OCT lamp here, and very severe calcium with some protruding. Sir, yeah, initially we tried with the regular. Yes, non-compliant. Not a cutting. So then after that, and later we have used even ideal balloon there based on the severe protruding calcium nodules. Then we have done the stenting here. Then we have done LMCA to LCX stent. Then we have done the kissing. Then finally we put a LED stent there. This is the final result after. And we have expanded because patient tolerated well, and we expanded the impeller on table. And post procedure, the hemodynamics AVDP is better, and he improved. And coming to the case, he is a 65-year-old gentleman. He is hypertensive diabetic. He had COVID in 2021, and post COVID he developed in October. He went to his native place. There he developed antival MI, and with that in delayed presentation he developed severe elbow dysfunction, and angio was done, showed severe tuberculosis disease. PET scan was done at that time, showed viability in all the territories. But initially only PTCA was done to RCA. Because LAD showed the anatomy, this is the LAD anatomy. So because of this very thin and very diffusely, this is LAD. Opinion was whether to do or not to do. Multiple opinions they have taken. So RCA stents were taken. But again, in the month of after 6 months, we have done viability study. Still, that area is viable, and he has LV dysfunction. So we told them, because viability is there, likely to improve. Let us try. So then we went ahead and we. So this is a very diffusely diseased lady from the arterial mid part, and this is a diffuse disease. And LCX is almost like very severe disease. And initially, and the LMCA is also disease. So initially, we dilated the LMCA part to have some room there. Then, with the microcatheter support, we crossed the lesion and we dilated. Then, after that, we severely dilated the lesion up to the LMCA artery. Finally, this part we have stented the mid part and long segment from mid to proximal. Then again, this arterial part of LMCA to proximal. This is the final. This is the final good flow, at least the flow vessel is thin vessel, likely to open up because of the chronic low flow. So here you can see that the L6 territory is very diffusely diseased. Only we have done the LED part. And, this is the OCT then. We have achieved a good result. So this type of cases to do impeller support is very good, and it gives courage to the operator, and it gives, as we all know, that complete revascularization is possible with impeller, and cost is the only factor here in India. To counsel the patient about very huge cost of 20 to 25 lakhs, and again hospitalization and PTCA cost. That is the only thing. Probably with the now the impeller is acquired by Johnson & Johnson, so in near future it's likely to have some cost reduction. And, so these impeller devices are life-saving devices. It saves not only the patient life, it saves our life. First of all, the lab.
What happens to the intermittent material? Slow flow, low flow, side front occlusion, lot of contrast flow. You may end up with non-diffusive MIs, which are not recognized in impeller support. And also, maybe I'm conservative, but sometimes, bypassing these lesions is better. Sometimes you get away, you have got a calcium nodule. I was wondering how it's going to behave. Calcium nodule, unless you have articulated, you won't really get a most of the time.
You use the ideal.
Yeah, I will also. Because it doesn't feel residual. Calcium nodule still.
All mechanical support devices, and the cardiologists. Where they checked IABP versus impella. Actually, impella was reaching almost statistically significant benefits compared to IABP, even after propensity scoring. So they in fact said that because this randomized trials are not giving observed results, but the result was given.
Yes.
So most probably it needs larger numbers.
Yes, impeller.
To spend with us in this Thank you for your next.